Okay, I will start. Please start the record button. So we are live here from Sharm el Sheikh, the Digital Innovation and the Digital Arts for Climate Pavilion at the COP27 Climate Change Conference of the United Nations. I'm Miroslav Polzer
Irina Karagao.
and we are the coordinators of Digital Arts for Climate Initiative, which is an initiative which wants to bring the energy and new visions of the creative community to the global climate action efforts. And we are delighted to have today Karina Abramova with us to talk about creativity, climate, and Web3. And perhaps a few words of welcome from Irina first, and then we give to Karina.
Thank you, Miroslav. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We have been running events here at Digital Innovation Digital Art for Climate Pavilion for the past 2 weeks. This is week 2 of COP. For us, it's Creative Week. We inaugurated COP27 art competition, selected and announced the winners, and we are already preparing for COP28. Important thing that I want to message that I want to deliver is that we want to include more creative communities in our competitions and in our initiative, and build a bridge for COP28 between the UAE governmental initiatives and ministries, as well as creative sector, as well as entrepreneurship. So today our panel discussion is around creative industries, and Karina has experience working with research institutions, museums, and art networks. And we're very excited to listen to your perspective on creative industry in Web3. Over to you, Karina.
Thank you, Irina. Thank you to everyone for joining us today. This is going to be a very exciting discussion, and I better get started. Sorry for the technical issues earlier on. So as mentioned, this conversation is going to be about how new technology and emerging technologies, in Web3 in particular, can be able to use to build more sustainable futures, leveraging the powers of creativity and human ingenuity in service of the environment. So I better get down straight to it. So a little bit about me. I am Karina Abramova. I left behind more than 17 years of my experience in the business world in order to fight climate change. And now I'm doing a master's at Central St. Martin's, which is an art school in London, where I am researching how digital objects can affect physical change. So I'm doing that as an artist behind Las Palmas Doradas, hence the name on the invite. It's a physical and digital eco-art activism project aimed at raising ecological awareness and taking environmental action. I'm also a founder behind Emergence, which is a climate community focused on taking people away from screens and into nature. And today I'm here because I'm a firm believer that collectively we can, we are at the doorstep of radical multidisciplinary collaboration. We have very complex issues around climate in front of us, and we will need all of the imagination we can put together in order to solve these issues. So today, I'm very much thrilled to be guiding this climate discussion with brilliant agents of change. We have representatives from the art world, Web3 climate projects, Web3 technologies that can power positive change, and even a tech anthropologist. So please introduce yourselves a little bit, starting with Nick, and then we will start the discussion.
Thanks, Karina. My name's Nick Hackworth. I'm a art writer and curator. I run a private art collection called Modern Forms, which is normally based in London. And most recently, I ran a one-year non-profit pop-up project called Paradise Row. We were physically based in Mayfair, London, and we were tweaking the commercial art world model and presenting the commercial art gallery as a social enterprise. And I also work with an Amazonian-based NGO called Amazonia Alerta. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Can we go to Sebnem next, please? Then Sam and Kalpana.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to win this round. I'm a computer scientist, Sebnem Ruzicka, from Munich, Germany, and I have been working in decentralized energy systems and peer-to-peer systems networking, applied research all my career life, research career. But in 2017, 2016, I decided to move beyond the firewall of corporates and actually dive into this participatory networks of value creation, which now came to call Web3. And basically, it's still decentralized energy system with Unity Crypto. Right now, we are tokenizing revenue shares as well as environmental impact that can be measured in a data-driven way and tokenized. But I also started working with artists to actually, how can we make these tokens really mean and matter to the people who are actually really creating impact in the real world, but in an invisible way by avoiding carbon emissions? So how can we bring these values together, make them visible, make people move, give them their agency that they have? So super excited to be here. Thank you, Karina. Thank you, everyone.
Sam, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Wasn't me that muted. Hi, everybody. Cheers, Karina, for inviting me. This is very exciting. My name is Samuel Barlow, and I'm also a background in computer science, but I'm now what I would describe as an impact entrepreneur and investor, and I'm pushing all of my energies into creating reciprocity with our world, along with our technology and human behaviors. That's how I would describe it.
And hi, everyone. I'm Kalpana. I am a variety of things, but I'm a technologist, climate activist, urban gardener, and ecosomatics educator. I'm currently working in the intersection between technology, nature, and urban design. And 2 years ago, I founded a social enterprise called Nowadays on Earth, which is advocating for contact with nature in the digital age and growing environmental justice.
Thank you, Kalpana. Thanks, everyone. So let's get started right away. So a little bit of an introduction to the topic. One of the things we have all probably observed is that the mainstream narrative about blockchain, cryptocurrency, Web3 and the environment has been squarely about energy consumption, if you can remember from the mainstream media. So, for example, Bitcoin is responsible for 1% of the world's energy consumption, which is quite a lot. And what I want to point out here, though, is the blockchain community has done something about it. So 2 months ago, for example, if you remember, we had Ethereum's the merge moment, right? That was something that we've been waiting on for many years. That's been in discussion for a long time, which seems like an eternity in the crypto world. However, it still was a change that happened much faster than things are changing in the real world. Overnight, Ethereum's electricity use dropped by 99.99%. Which is an equivalent of 0.25% of world's energy consumption, and its carbon emissions dropped as well by 99.98%. So this is really amazing because they addressed their effect on climate. They did something about it, and I feel the blockchain community has something to celebrate, or does it? Because energy consumption is one thing. But we are living in a moment where a global race to net zero is on. Companies and governments are setting objectives. They're making statements. They're looking at the system. They are trying to shift, and there's a lot of discussion and movement around it. So what this really means is that climate solutions will be even more demand moving forward as we reach critical timeframes. So today, we will shed light on how Web3 tools and new builds and developments in the space, how the technology can deliver real-world climate mitigation solutions, and how the role of creativity will feature in it. I believe, creativity is going to be leading us forward, because things like, artistic expression and creative communications are very subjective topics. And I believe that it's the subjectivity and emotionality of the message is what really can get to the hearts of the people and ignite real change. So with that, hopefully that all makes sense and you're on board. With that, we will begin, and we'll head straight to Nick to begin the top of the conversation with art. So Nick, one of the things that I keep reflecting on a lot is this quote by Marshall McLuhan, who's a media theorist, who said that art can be relied on to tell the old culture what is beginning to happen to it, and a poet, Ezra Pound, said that artist is the antenna of the world. So we're looking at artists as harbingers of the future and as the great, imaginaries that can help us build new. So question to you is, could you get us all on the same page and tell us a little bit about instances where an artist or a group of artists managed to bring awareness to an important social, political, or environmental topic, and why do you think they might have worked? And is there a bigger role of art in alerting the mass consciousness to the climate emergency we're living in?
Well, I'm not sure if I can actually, because thinking about it, it's actually, there aren't very many good examples of artists or group of artists who have sort of paved the way or been the kind of spearhead, if you like, for bringing awareness to a political issue or an environmental issue. I mean, if we think about some of the most famous works of political art, probably the most famous is Picasso's Guernica. You can go further back in history to Rolf de Medusa, or by Géricault, or David's paintings. Some of them painted during the French Revolution, which probably had quite an impact at the time. But if you think about art and environmentalism, there aren't actually that many examples. Olaf Eliassen's probably the most famous contemporary artist who explicitly deals with climate change, and he's had some many great works of art. I mean, that's a subjective opinion, of course. But actually, I think what's interesting about this discussion is what the possibilities are, and what the possibilities with creativity and new technologies might be in creating new forms that combine theoretical ideas, more aesthetic phenomena, with political content. And I think that's what's really exciting about a panel like this, and bringing people from industries, I mean, some of which obviously didn't exist until recently, but from different areas of life that normally might not be talking to each other. Because I think actually in reality, artists have actually tended to follow or illustrate a moment rather than actually bring that moment to the fore. And I think probably the most political examples of artists are not very good ones. The way that totalitarian states use art or deploy artists are probably like the most political examples we can think of. But actually with Web3, which I'm not an expert on at all, so I look forward to hearing the contributions of the other speakers, the idea of decentralized communities cropping up and aligning that and mapping that onto specific political or environmental concerns and artistic communities, that seems very interesting. That seems to be like a place where new models might emerge.
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, it seems like, it sounds like it is about groundswell and getting those bodies and numbers to move in a specific way, and that's something that we will be discussing later today. So thank you for that. It looks like there is a lot of room for, it sounds like there's a lot of room for growth for all of us with your answer, Nick. So let's go to Karina. So going straight to the heart of the matter. I'm curious to hear from you as an ecosomatics practitioner and a tech anthropologist. What are the climate issues that we believe we could tackle in this time frames with the power of the communities and kind of creative communities that Nick referenced? Would you have any advice to give to audiences, so the audience in the room who are building on Web3 and Web2 and have specific issues in mind?
Yeah, this is a great question, because I think it really speaks to sort of the myriad of crises and issues that we face collectively as humanity right now. And at the same time, it calls for our own expertise to sort of rise up. So I'm going to speak from a very macro perspective, and please think about it in a way that really relates to the topics that you're working on, finding solutions in, or applying solutions in. Very simply and very directly, it's really important to look at the intersectionality of issues and not treat things as if they behave or live in silos, because that's a lot of where the drive from the issues we're currently facing are really rooting from, and really demand climate justice in whatever sector you're in. So a lot of the times with either Web3 and Web2, there's a claim to want to build a better and green future, but we want to make sure that that's not just another form of greenwashing, and that we're not still building with the previous structural rot, so to speak, that is driving us into climate and social collapse. So we need to build a system that's based on trust and collaboration and accountability, and one that doesn't just platform individuals or individual entities, but acknowledges the people and the power of people, and doesn't put profit over the planet, which really means that we can't build the economic backbones of Web3 based on the exploitation of people and nature for profit. And there needs to be a shift of seeing nature just as a valuable resource that's meant for our human benefit, to a living and breathing entity, which the Earth is. And one way that we can start considering that is bringing human and nature rights into the process of building these technologies. So while we have techno-capitalism that pushes for more carbon sequestering methods and policies on trading carbon credits, these kind of structures still are perpetuating a really toxic relationship with the living world, because we're just objectifying and exploiting from it. We're not seeing beyond the numbers and beyond the data, that this kind of work can still impact the most vulnerable communities who have contributed the least to the climate crisis. So I think, in my perspective, the way that we can really create a green and flourishing world is to deconstruct those narratives that see us and weave us into this story of our human nature as apart from the world around us. And we can use technology then to kind of envision a flourishing world for all, and not just for the very few that can benefit. So where I see the power of Web3 and the power of technology is in being able to create this sort of transparency and this accountability, because I think you need trust to build radical kinship with these communities and between each other, and human to human, and even human to non-human worlds.
Sorry,
Agreed.
I lost the window for a second. Thank you so much. That's a really great answer. And it's, as you were talking about it, I kept thinking about a massive need of re-educating a lot of people, and that's something that also might come with generational change. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. I'm sure Sam will have a few things to say on it. But first, a quick question for Sebnem. So moving directly into the solutions, and in this case. Unergy is a Swiss solar as a service business that's scaling in Europe to bring clean energy to consumers. And Unergy's crypto's first product is for individuals like you and me who want to offset and at the same time participate in inflation-adjusted revenues from long-term solar power purchase agreements. So can you please tell us more about this process and the role of crypto within it, how this is one of the examples that's directly addressing climate change?
Yes, yes. And I want to explain it in a way to connect to what I heard Kalpana saying, and then pointing towards like this whole transparency and participation possibility is there. And what you also said, but that then requires real participation. And to be able to participate, you need a agency, right? And then also learning. And learning with these new technologies and within all these uncertainties, we are asking a lot from us. But I also believe like it's the one door we haven't just yet went through. And now with Unergy and Unergy Crypto, as I mentioned, we're with the Unergy Crypto part, we're opening this values from the solar rooftops, which is revenue generation, revenue share, but also the environmental value to Web3 participants, individuals. That, for example, for offsetting what you cannot reduce. For example, we have decided not to fly to Cairo, but all the participants there that decided that was a flight that they cannot reduce, right? Cannot avoid. To give them the opportunity to participate directly in directly offsetting the carbon credit from solar rooftops in their wallets on chain without any intermediaries. We don't need additional registries and additional certifiers if we all understand how this technology works, if we can, through our understanding, build trust in it, and also trust in ourselves that now we are the actors, we have agency, we make good decisions. Again, one decision is not just offsetting, right, but actually deciding whether one can reduce carbon emissions. Next thing is avoiding carbon emissions, right? And we should really, really, really only allow for removing, right? Because that opens up the door to say, okay, like we do with our plastic and waste recycling, right? It's a big lie, and we have been growing in this big lie. So again, I think it's what we offer is this participation. We offer the technology, and I also know that we are going to offer the Unergy Crypto School, so that people really understand what is in this token. And one thing I want to put is in this token, as our collaboration with fellow artists who are in the climate awareness area, who are active, who have been active there as well, is to really imbue these values of making good in a token that you can have in your wallet, that you can have a climate collection that actually speaks to, in a data-driven way, to what you have done well, but also connects us or connect you to your impact, but then also connects us in our networks of value.
Thank you, Sednam. I feel like I have more questions about this, how we bake values into the system, and how do we how do people self-select and find themselves? Which brings me next to Sam. Perhaps there's something we can talk about there. The other week, Sam and I had a very interesting discussion about how Web3 tech is, one of the only ways or the few ways in encouraging transparent and positive behavior that's built on positive values, shared ecological goals even. So can you tell us a bit more about your philosophy and then the creative thought process behind the tools you've built with Loop, which is your company?
I think the people here are really getting quite to the core, the heart of the matter, which is great. I think the key things are economics, governance, and education. As I think Kalpana said, people need to feel more connected to the solution. Well, that's how I interpreted what she was saying, and I think Web3 is one of the ways that we can eventually achieve that. At the moment, there's everybody lives their lives, and we go to supermarkets, we go to our homes, and we live lives that a lot of people live lives that are quite disconnected from environment. And in some ways, that's a good thing, because cities are more ecologically friendly overall per capita than everybody being spread out. But that doesn't mean that we've lost our responsibility for environment. And where I see Web3 going is it can facilitate more inclusive governance between sort of micro governments, i.e. local governments, up to macro governance, i.e. large scale policies that change energy and resource usage on a large scale. And it then can also provide the transparency that enables the governance of that to be accountable and enable people or empower people to make decisions on our behalf, but with so much transparency and so much responsibility in those decisions that they will hopefully act with greater altruism for the world over and above just their personal gain. And then on a transactional level, we're not there yet, but I think smart contracts over time could intrinsically connect our transactional day-to-day living with environment and society, as we learn about the interactions between those two things. And we're in early days, in my opinion, to that. But without something that is objectively transparent to the world, that has a feedback loop to environment and one another, I don't think it's possible for us to walk that path as a species, as a single unified movement. And so that's where I see Web3 really making a big difference in the years to come.
Thank you, Sam. I really hope we can make it happen. On that note, yeah, it's a big journey, but all good and worthwhile things are. So going to the second set of the questions, let's get a little bit closer to the creative community and the artistic community. And I want to go back to Nick, because as Nick mentioned in his introduction, he turned the commercial art world a little bit on its head by taking a 1-year social enterprise project, Paradise or Projects. And I've been to several shows. It's been an amazing and very interesting way of seeing how he's been blending digital and physical, as well as collaborating with different groups and donating substantial or more than traditional amounts to them through the sales of the proceeds from art sales. One of the things that I found quite fascinating is your first exhibition titled Hawala, which references a ledger. And what you did is you not only did you have a physical exhibition in Berkeley Square in Mayfair, but you also had a digital one with where the whole exhibition was in the metaverse, as existing as a single NFT, which is very daring and new. So I am wondering, since then, this was a year ago. So since then, what was the response to this has been, and have you noticed any possibilities for activist projects within that metaverse space and blending in the physical and digital? And do you think that digital technology, how could this digital technology enable artistic communities? You mentioned decentralization. Are you, is it a viable fundraising mechanic? Are artists exploring these areas? Or if not, do you have any advice to them to consider as they try to blend these new forms?
I think I lost you for a second at the end, but I think I got most of the question. But I'm actually going to answer a question you haven't actually asked to begin with, because I just thought on the highest level, since all the speakers gave really interesting overviews, I just want to give some top level thoughts, as it were, about art and the environmental movement, about what it can and can't do. And I think thinking about it a bit more positively than my first answer, I think what art can provide is symbolic meanings, which obviously is what art is. So I don't think it's ever going to function particularly well as a kind of marketing department to kind of get, engage more people into the environmental movement. But I think what it can do is provide intellectual and philosophical connection. And obviously that's a very subjective experience, but it can tell us, and it can help write new narratives, which of course is really absolutely essential, as Kalpana was highlighting. So creating those new narratives, creating new kinds of symbolic connection between us and the environmental movement and nature, that's really, I think, the value of art. And then of course mapping it onto Web3 and various technologies, that's one area where those symbolic meanings can be manifest. And the second thing I think about art that's very interesting is that it's always been contemporary art space, at least in the last 100, 150 years, as long as there's been something relatively that can be recognized as contemporary and modern art. It's always been an open, synergistic space. It's one of the few spaces in contemporary culture where lots and lots of people come together, often with completely different backgrounds and thoughts, and then things emerge. And possibly that's quite similar to the tech environment or the Web3 environment, perhaps. So I think quickly answering that question is, I don't know to what extent the artists. Artists are exploring this, and I think one thing that was interesting is that there were lots of NFT artists who were telling me more about the crypto community and trying to link maybe some of the environmental and ethical concerns that the crypto community, particularly the traditional original crypto community, had, and seeing how we could link and take that energy and then link that through to environmental concerns by raising money through NFTs. But it's certainly something I am interested in looking at, and I think there's huge amounts of scope for this kind of culture to emerge. And I think it can combine all the elements the different speakers were talking about: governance, transparency, new narratives. And I think, like I said, what art can do is kind of maybe bring them all together in terms of having a layer of aesthetic meaning over all of those different functionalities. So I don't think I've answered your question exactly, but that's an answer anyway.
No, absolutely. I think this is a better answer because you're incorporating everything that we're talking about. And I love the part about symbolic meaning. Like that's really what it is. It's the storytelling, and Arthur Danto in his What Art Is book talks about exactly that. It's making of the meaning. So now we're in this, I think this is the positive side of it, and the opportunities to create new stories and for new narratives to emerge, really, and for the groups who have these narratives to rise up. So thank you. This is great. Very, very inspiring. This brings me to Sebnem, because UNRG has been working with artists, and so the question I want to ask, taking this to practical concerns, how was the day-to-day collaboration with artists in a very engineering and high-tech heavy domain on one hand, and something that's very, subjective and emotional and subtle, such as art? And can you share any learnings and the community's response?
Actually, my learning was just what Nick gave just now, and it was I collaborated with Unity Crypto, basically creating art, generative art from the data about carbon emissions avoided, and creating art that visualizes this impact and kind of makes people understand what is a kilogram, or at least kind of symbolize it, right? So if you like, we can go in there how that was, like grow a forest became out of it, but also this is an NFT with solar prints. And one of the artists, Jean, who really helped or who conceptualized the whole art research program, Values of Sun, that was accompanying us, but where I also made a big effort to give it its space, you know. We were very clear from the beginning that we're not going to go for marketing on the, you know, my traditional stakeholder side. You know, why are we funding this? You know, what is the outcome of it? What is the business outcome? So we wanted to keep that at bay. But also in Web3, token engineering is incentive mechanism design, is behavior, in worst cases, social engineering. So it was a very fine line, and we always also, well, Jean was very, obviously very, very attuned to these aspects, and she was very clear. Every time I was maybe pushing too much, because I'm also in this, you know, we need the project set up, it's a technical challenge, coordinating people, but also really wanting to have this new narrative about valuing something that we don't do, right? We don't pollute. How do we value that? How do we make people connect to that value that they have helped a fund put out there, but now they're basically connecting to this continuous over the next 20 years when there's a solar rooftop installed anywhere. That spot will be not polluting, not depending on the carbon intensity of the power grid, local power grid. That is going to be a clean oasis, and I am participating in whatever forms there as well. And now Unity Crypto only focuses on the financing side, because that is something I believe is feasible today with crypto, that transactional connections at the very least, and making things transparent and making decentralizing the participation and decision making around collaboratively managing those values, as Samuel also said. So that is something we can do today, but really it is this really complex system. And coming from tech, distributed systems management, I can deal with this complex system. But what we need to put in there is actually this, how should I say, maybe you can say it better. But what I saw is that the artists have natural appreciation of the complexity, and being able to pinpoint one single essence of it and put it out there. So even if people do not understand all the complexity, they have this connection. And I want to have that in these tokens. So this is still ongoing work, and it's still going to be researched. But it was very valuable to, making space for open and free collaboration without pushing for certain outcomes, which would just make it another marketing gig. We did not want to go there at all, but also about making people do things like token engineering or incentive mechanism design. Again, I feel that with bringing art or artfulness into how we design this system, we can open space for more agency and participation, meaning people understand and are moved and take action, versus we make them do things by, I don't know, engineering their behaviors. So that was interesting. Again, the challenge or this highly dynamic exchange of where are we going to, that also needs a special place, because typically in a tech-driven environment, you have daily stand-ups to get features out there. So it's very different modes of operation, and definitely want to get better there as well. Like, how can we really bring our collaborations into this business world and actually open up the business world a bit more to the fluidity of creation.
That sounds like a very lovely task. I mean, I come from the business world myself, and there's definitely room for this kind of integration. And what I like you mentioned is the fact, this connection. You know, like if people don't understand all of the technology behind it, which is alienating in a way, the connection can be there through the universal language of creativity and art. So again, the meaning that Nick mentioned. So I'm conscious about the time. There are 8 minutes left, and I believe there may be another session afterwards. So two questions. Hopefully we will get through, and maybe even have one question from the audience if we have time. Sam, you have a couple of case studies from your experience of engaging groups to collective action. And experience, and through your experience in the creative space, which was music. Can you take us through, can you tell us more a little bit about it? Can you paint a few scenarios where creative actors took over the narrative for good and actually did something with it that could be inspiring to all of us?
Yeah, not a problem. So yeah, I founded and built a company called Open Stage, which is engaging millions of people in the creative industries, music industry in particular, and that is all about coordinating audiences geographically and demographically. So where I see artists, and this applies to all forms of artists. Their power is their influence, both from a creative point of view and from a voice point of view. And so I believe, or I hope over time, that more and more people in that space will use that power to drive the message of greater reciprocity with our environment. Now, I think systems need to be put in place to help them do that, because I think each voice is quite isolated at the moment, systemically. But there's two ways I think they can tackle it at the moment, which is, one is that they can use their voice to create groups, which in theory could become governance groups for doing things in the world that facilitate change and better outcome for environment and society. And the other thing is actually right down to the transactional level of selling their art. So NFTs, for example, people don't need to fully understand what NFTs are, but just to put it simply, they enable a form of transaction that could, have reciprocity with our environment. For example, if you were selling your album for $10, and you could set from day one that, each transaction with that, for that particular album, $1 goes to, some form of environmental action or some form of environmental body. And then even when that is sold on again, the smart contract can repeat that process, so that the artists can put material into the world that starts pushing an ever-increasing movement of reciprocity, both on a voice point of view, a message point of view, and a transactional level, in theory.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, these are the things that we need to keep being practiced, and more case studies are needed to test the model. So conscious of time here, last question that is for Kalpana, but others can chime in as well as when she answers as well, because it'd be nice to hear from all of you. We've been living through the separation between technology and nature for a couple of 100 years now, ever since science took a big forefront and we disconnected from our hearts and went entirely in the mind. So humans in a way have been conditioned. We are in a specific way of thinking. So question for Kalpana, as a ecosomatics practitioner, a lover of technology and nature, can you tell us how you think humanity might cultivate a more positive relationship between nature and technology? Do you have any tips for all of us online and in the audience on how, what are the tangible actions we all can take from now onwards?
Yes, I love this question, and it's something that's really at the heart of what we advocate for at Nowadays on Earth. We often like to address this very inherent and dialectical tension between nature and technology, because oftentimes they're placed in opposite conceptual poles that then sort of displaces our role of, as human beings on Earth. And we really need to be able to embrace both our ingenuity, which means that we've co-evolved with our creations and the technology, while also affirming the fact that we are a part of nature itself, and that we are nature itself, in order to kind of really move towards that radical new vision of the world that we all want to co-create here. So for me, a few of the most practical tips is really try to decenter anthropocentric perspectives in order to kind of come more into a systems thinking point of view, and look at the intersectionality of things and how we're all kind of, we've been speaking sort of nodes throughout this conversation, but we're all these kind of focused nodes of interrelated connection, and just how this whole complex system really works together as one entity. So going out into your local community and really connecting to your environment and supporting the local climate organizations that might be there is a great way to kind of extend that network out, in order to kind of go towards that new stepping stone for a just, fair, and green future. So connect to nature, connect to your community, and my favorite one is connect to your body. Just remember that you are a part of nature.
Thank you. Do others want to add to that before I jump to the conclusion?
I thought that was a great, last sort of sentence, because it couldn't be more true.
Yeah, I would add to that as well. For no matter what geography you're in, go for a walk. Step outside, be familiar with what grows in your area. What kind of trees have you got? What do the leaves look like? Because that, in my opinion, also grounds you very much to where you are and your geography, and hopefully you will care more, as a result. So we are coming down to our final moment here. So a couple of things that I've heard from the conversation that really struck me is, look at art to create new meanings, new stories, new narrative. Cultivate connection with others, they'll engage through this emotion and these new narratives and visual language or whatever that might be to draw people in, because at the end of the day, it's an emotional magnet. Establish new reciprocity models. I think that's very key to test, establish, try, and keep going. If anybody has anything else to add, please say it here. For those in the audience who want to follow us as well, look us up on LinkedIn or Twitter. We are all there. Any questions, send them over. And something Nick wanted to say, please.
Well, it was just about, I was thinking about something else that I guess that art sometimes provides is also critical thinking, really. I think about the stories and images that we are, constantly consuming, and obviously that's part of the problem. So I think also being discerning and critical about the information which we are, constantly swamped by is probably like another key aspect. So how do you disentangle the good stories from the bad stories, or the narratives that we need to know and the information we do need to know from all the rest.
Yeah, and that's a really good point in today's climate and technological climate as well. Okay, Miro, I see you on screen, and did you want to say a couple of words to close? I imagine we are out of time right now. Wait, I think you're on mute. You're on mute. Or we can't hear them. Help.
No.
Thank you, everybody, by the way. It was wonderful chatting with you all.
Yes, very inspiring, and also putting it all together in this frame that really helped. I'm super happy to see some things coming out of this connection as well.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to say a very heartfelt thank you for your contribution. I firmly believe that this deep societal transformation that we need for really effectively addressing the climate crisis. This cannot succeed if there is not this contribution of the creative community in terms of new visions of a potential better world, potential better future, and this social energy, the emotions that you can trigger, and the grand stories that need to be told, and the creative community has to guide us, and it's wonderful. Karina, Abramova, thank you very much, and Irina, your concluding words. Or would somebody like to comment or ask some questions?
We have a shy audience today. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you everybody who watched us online. You can see speakers' profiles if you want to get in touch with them and discuss further, please do. Or reach out to us if you want to participate in Digital Art for Climate initiative. Also, we are running another event at UNESCO headquarters 25-26 of November. So everybody's welcome. It's going to be open doors, and we're bringing our community, environmental conscious community, and Web3 together. I really hope that these initiatives continue. This is our very first COP and presence at COP as a community of tech art with the Digital Innovation Pavilion. And we're hoping that this will gain traction, gain momentum, build the movement, and we're getting very positive feedback from here that we are a unique initiative. So thank you so much for joining us, for having this discussion here. Also, the recording will be available later on social media for those who want to watch the replay. And yeah, thank you so much, and looking forward to seeing you joining our other initiatives.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. Thanks, everyone.